Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Thought Leadership Podcast and the Speak Your Legacy series. And this series is created for you who are leaders, who are conscious visionaries, impressive, beautiful humans who are here to impact the world. And I created this series to inspire you and support you in the journey of finding your own legacy. There are beautiful people out in the world who are creating impressive, conscious, heart-centered missions. And my intention is to bring them to this episode so you get to meet them, to hear their stories and learn from them so we together can create a co-elevation. And today, Judy V is here with me. She's the founder of Attune to Prosperity, and she has an incredible life experience and knowledge that she's going to share with us today. Welcome on the show, Judy.
Thank you, Daria. So good to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure. And we are going to talk about a beautiful topic today that is potentiality and overcoming challenges. And the reason I want to talk about this is that as an entrepreneur, as a leader, there are always moments when we are seeing the vision. And especially if you're a visionary entrepreneur, like most of our community are, you have these big goals, big dreams, big aspirations. And with that comes sometimes challenges. And sometimes you have control of them, sometimes you don't. And today we want to have this conversation with Judy, how you can navigate challenges so you can overcome them, and more than overcome them, thrive in your life with the challenges that come your way. And Judy, is there something that you can introduce us with that can help us to get on that journey when it comes to that?
Sure, absolutely. I'm pretty much known as the challenge person. So I honestly do believe, and I think this is an incredibly important, valuable discussion. It is also an advanced discussion, you know, which is the journey your listeners are on. And that the fact that we can have this conversation now is incredible. And that essentially, when we are able to lean into challenges and start seeing them as an act of love, rather than something to try and push through, try and run from, be overpowered by, but look at challenges that come into our life, especially when we have big visions, especially when we have big dreams, and we're stepping out into beyond our comfort zone, into the unknown. There will be challenges, but when you experience them, when you step into them, when you lean into them, and ask yourself the quality question: well, how is this an act of love? Where is the love in this experience? I have learned that when you ask yourself that question, when you seriously are honest with yourself, you surrender to the information coming to you through your soul, you will find the love and the perfection in that experience that will allow you to take such incredible quantum leaps, be out of the field of predictability, which is what you would inevitably create when you're trying to push through or run from a challenge, and you experience something extraordinary on the other side, which is potentiality. I have seen this so often, and it's not an easy one to take, because some people say, yeah, but like, how can you look at what's going on in the world? How can you see that? How can you say that challenge is an act of love? Because sometimes we're faced with some pretty hard stuff, pretty scary stuff. And it's hard to see it as an act of love. And I get that totally. The thing is, we're more than just this mortal human. We're more than this body. We're more than this blood and skin and bone and brain. We're more than that. This is just the human version of us. We are a soul. We are a spirit. And as Einstein said, we have forgotten that gift, what I call our soul set. We've forgotten that intuitive gift. We've forgotten that connection with our angelic self. And we have promoted the ego to master. And it's the ego that gets triggered by challenges and responds to challenges, but the soul doesn't. Because the soul knows it's part of the journey that we are here to experience in order for us to come out the other end. So the way of understanding, or the way to navigate and embracing challenge as an act of love, is to take your human on the journey. I'm not saying that the human is not going to be hurt with a challenge, or disappointed, or feel violated, or feel threatened. Then the human will. And it's okay for the human to respond to that as appropriate for the human. But as soon as we can, to lean into the challenge from the soul place, from a coherent place, heart coherence, our activated energy centers, coherence, from our soul place, and lean into it and really surrender to asking ourselves the question, where is the act of love on this? And you take your human on that journey, because your soul, your spirit is so much greater than the human. And it's through that journey that you step into creating, manifesting, co-creating with the universe, things that you cannot imagine with your current thinking. It's impossible to imagine with current thinking. And that is the field of potentiality, where what you desire is created. It's there, it's done. You are calibrated, you are in match, it's there, it's done. There is no amount of the human emotions or the human's perspective that is going to deter you creating that which you desire. That is what's on the other side of challenge, when you see it as an act of love.
Wow. There's so much to take in on that conversation. And what I'm hearing is almost another life philosophy on how we approach life. As you mentioned, ego being in our center of our journey, and that feeling of that you are in control. You are in control of your journey, and somehow that you can already predict. You talked about predictability, and that we are predicting a path, we are predicting a plan. And when that plan is not going the way we want, it can be small or big, there is a resistance to that change that is becoming, with the challenge, even harder, because we are resisting that journey. We don't want to go on that journey. And therefore, we are staying in the predictability, if I understand it right, and we are staying in that predictability, and we are forcing against it, rather than to lean into it and surrender and see it as an act of love and see what's there. Because with that, we are releasing the resistance and allowing the grace to come in to lead us to something much higher, much bigger. Is that, I try to formulate it with my words to find the words to what that means. And would you say that it's in alignment with what you just mentioned?
It's beautifully put. It's so beautiful. That was wonderful. It's exactly that, because the universe is love. The universe is the high levels of consciousness of synthesized emotions, which is love, compassion, empathy, gratitude, and appreciation. That is the universe. The universe is always there to serve us. It works with us, it serves us. It only knows love. It doesn't know anything else. So anything it will put in our way, anything the universe puts in our path is an act of love. It's the human that applies meaning to it. It's a human that will judge it and have perceptions based on past coding, based on past conditioning, based on beliefs and past experiences. It will apply a meaning to it. But the universe, it wants to take us to where we desire. When we are holding a vision of what it is we would love, the only way we can grow into that vision is through our challenges. That's the only way we can take quantum leap growth of evolution is towards our vision, is through our challenges. And embracing those challenges does mean stepping out of the comfort zone, stepping away from what you are predictably assuming is what is coming or where you're going, and lean into their challenges. And what you find on the other side is a whole field of potentiality, where you have actually taken a quantum leap now, and you are that person to handle the elevated energy of that space. That's what happens on a soul set. Something that I've started to understand is that so long now we have focused on mindset, and help, shifting our beliefs and shifting our understanding what our vision is, and understanding our purpose in life, what our values are, understanding the value of elevated levels of consciousness and heart coherence. But that in itself is limited. Taking a step further into what I call the soul set, being guided by our higher self, our angelic self, our superconscious. That's where that's the seat of our being. The gateway to that is obviously through heart coherence, and activated energy centers is the gateway to that. And when you step into that place, that's where there are no judgments. That's where you see the perfection in everything. You might say, like, people might be thinking, yeah, great, that's great. So many people have said that, but how do you know? How do you do this? What is it? And it is, and it's one of the things I do work with people on, is like, how do you shift from living in the form or in the human, and being triggered and living, because we respond to our autonomic nervous system. That's what the human responds to. And when we, how do you step out of that? How do you not respond to that? Because challenges obviously trigger our sympathetic nervous system, and biologically we respond. And this is why it's so important to live in that place where you are more and more connected to the higher self, the superconscious self. That's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, no more than leaning into challenges and seeing challenges as an act of love overnight. It's a process, but the more we become aware of it, the more we are aware of it, the more we will start seeing and getting evidence of it being something that rather takes us closer to what it is we desire than pulls us away from what it is we desire, because we are addicted to predictability. We're addicted to seeing evidence of stuff. But in the field of potentiality, you need to surrender. You need to understand that you can't see what's there. You cannot see what's there with your vision. The universe is omniscient, omnipresent. It sees everything. It understands what's good for you on the way. And you, as your human, have to become the person to hold the energy for the vision that you have. Yeah. So from my perspective, Daria, if I may take a few moments to talk about why I am so passionate about this, and why I can say without a shadow of a doubt that there's no challenge you can possibly experience in your mortal body that you are not greater than and does not serve you. Yeah. My background was what I was locked up from when I was about 3 years old until I escaped in my early 20s. And I was tortured and used as a slave. In every way you can imagine. I was tortured in ways that it is a miracle I survived. The most brutal home abortions with no anesthetic, shot, stabbed, thrown around. It's horrendous, right? And I remember when I was about 14 or 15, I had the first of what I've become consciously aware of, at least, out-of-body experience. And it's not unusual for people who are going through extreme challenge to experience this type of thing. Some people have near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. And so I remember the first time I consciously had it. I believe I had it before, but I was not really that consciously aware of it. But this particular incident, it had been a really rough torture, about 10 hours or so, nonstop. And I remember walking into the bathroom. I remember I totally isolated from the world, not socialized, not educated, nothing. So I walked into the bathroom this one morning. It was in Ireland. And I walked into the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and I walked over to the hand basin. And I remember feeling like a piece of meat. I lived only because my heart beat. That's it. That's the only, I felt like nothing. I felt nothing. And I remember going over to the hand base and then looking in the mirror, and for the first time in my life, actually seeing me. It's the first time I had obviously seen me myself before, but it's like I saw me.
Mm.
And I found my eyes looking into my eyes. I was looking into my eyes beyond my physical form, beyond the threadbare, light blue, torn nighty, beyond the bruises on my face, the blood on my lips, and looking into my eyes. And I remember reaching, almost like feeling like I was reaching into my eyes, and I grabbed something. It grabbed onto something in my solar plexus. Now that's very interesting, because what I've come to understand is the solar plexus is the seat between human. It's the seat between our human in our energy centers and our superhuman, our superconscious. Because we have like the three below. We've got the root energy center, we've got the sacral energy center, we've got the solar plexus energy center, and then from there is the heart. And when you enter the heart, then you've got the throat, the third eye, the crown. They're the access to our superconscious. But so much of our energy is trapped. It doesn't get beyond the solar plexus. And I remember holding on to there, and I called it for years my something. I didn't know what it was. I had no language for it. It was my something. And in that moment, I was transcended, and I was outside. It was morning, it was cold, winter morning in Ireland, but I wasn't cold. And I had this incredible moment of such expansion. I felt one with the birds. I could hear the birds' feathers. I felt one with the leaves on the tree rustling. I felt one with the raindrops on the window. I felt one with, I could smell grass being cut somewhere. I was one with that grass. I was one with you. There was no separation. There was no separation. And it was the most expansive feeling. What happened next was this thing just washed over me, this feeling washed over me that I had no idea what it was, but it was powerful. And as I looked into the bathroom, I could see this scraggly, skinny, traumatized girl. And in that moment, what happened was what I was feeling washed over her. And what it was love. Pure, beautiful, universal love, not chemical love that we experience in the human, but the most beautiful, exquisite love. Beyond that, I experienced the most extraordinary compassion and empathy for those who had tortured me throughout the years. In that moment, I healed. I healed myself of everything that I had experienced up until that point and everything I was yet to experience in that moment. And I was able to have compassion and empathy for those that were my captors. Beyond that, what happened next was, and yet even still, I have yet to articulate the enormity of this, but I could see infinite paths in front of me that would be my life. Infinite. It was more than I could actually hold on to. And I could see it, but not able to think the words in my head, just see it. Because, sometimes if you experience something you've never, ever experienced before, you can't quite put words on it yet. It's that moment is how I experienced that. And then, but I just knew a feeling that I would live an extraordinary life. I had no doubt about that. I knew that. Now, what felt like forever, that out-of-body experience, was probably just moments. I came back into my body. And when I was walking out, the girl that walked out was a different girl that walked into that bathroom. I walked out and I knew with my something, there is nothing you can do to my mortal body that will ever break my spirit. I knew that for a fact. And that was my spirit. That's what I leaned into. That's what I had to hold on to. Here's the interesting thing, but somewhere between coming back into my body and leaving the bathroom, in my head, I knew that I would escape. I knew that. There was no doubt about that. I knew that. I knew I would create a life. I knew that I would, I knew that, and this is the bizarre thing, it really is very bizarre. I knew that I would get a job in merchant banking. Why merchant banking? I have no idea. I didn't even know what it was, right? Stockbroking. I didn't even know what stockbroking was. I would get a job in shipping or oil and gas. Why? I have no, but they were the four things I knew I would do by the time I left the bathroom. You're talking about somebody who's 14, 15, no internet, no, living in Ireland, there were like 2 or 3 television stations. I mean, it wasn't like YouTube, you have now. Yeah. There was a different time, okay? And I just knew that that would be what I would do. But because, and here's again the interesting thing, I had no question how am I going to do it? It's ridiculous. There was no meaning applied to it, no judgment applied to it, none of the human involvement, just faith and trust and knowing it was done. I set about over the next few years. It took me another 5 or 6 years to escape. Again, aligned timing. Everything has aligned timing. I was not attached to when I would escape. That I just knew it. I knew it would be right when it's right. I just knew. This wasn't a rational thought. It was a knowing. Yeah. The mind rationalizes. The mind logicalizes. The soul doesn't. The soul knows. So I set about teaching myself about money and finance and business and educating, taught myself to read and write. I was fortunate because my energetic shift, I was able, even with my captors, to get the information, get the books that I desired. I taught myself. Sure enough, 5 or 6 years later, I escaped in the middle of the night. I took with me a book, Wuthering Heights, just that book, and I took a painting that I had done, and I took some scraggly old clothes. I had a little packet. That's all I had in the world. I knew no one. I knew nothing. And I escaped in the middle of the night. By the next day, I was in London. And when I escaped, I had no money. By the next day, I was in London. Within 1 week, I was a trading accountant on an oil and gas trading floor in London. Wow. Earning 6 figures a year. Within another week, I had a job. I was playing violin for a London orchestra. Within another week, I was a night auditor at Odeon Leicester Square, one of the most iconic movie houses in the UK. And I was doing those 3 jobs at once. Where did that come from? Because between the time of that experience when I was 14, 15, I also taught myself to play a violin, also taught myself to paint. Because when you access the wisdom of the universe, when you're in touch, when you calibrate to the universal intelligence, there's nothing you cannot do. There is nothing you cannot do. For the next few years, I lived purely in the field of potentiality. And how that works is that no amount of challenge that you experience does the human apply a meaning to, because the human that applies the meaning to it is what stops us and blocks us. Yeah. But in the field of potentiality, you observe. Like 10 months after I got this job, I was fired, right? Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I was not socialized and I wouldn't conform. My spirit was my guidance, not corporate, not what you demand of me. My spirit, my soul is my guidance. So I was not a conformist, and they didn't know how to deal with me. So they paid me to just go quietly. So, yeah, I'll take the money. And I went, but as a human, I didn't apply meaning to that. There was no, because when we're fired, how many times does our sympathetic nervous system get triggered and we like put a whole lot of meaning on it? I'm not good enough, and rage and be angry and all of those human emotions. I didn't experience any of that.
Mm.
That's interesting. Okay. And I went on, I got another job as an accountant in another oil and gas trading floor. No big deal. And this is what I say, that we have no idea when we're looking at potentiality from the mortal, from the human. We have no idea of our capacity, of the strength and the power that we have, and the power that the high levels of consciousness, emotions of love, compassion, empathy, appreciation, and gratitude, how powerful they are. And when we live in that, you understand that everything in life is on the way, there's nothing in the way, that everything is perfect, the challenges we experience are perfect. And the human cannot see it sometimes. And that's okay. It's okay not to be able to understand it and see it, but if we can lean into it and trust that somehow, somewhere, this is an act of love. Where is that act of love? Where is it? How is this serving? How is this serving me and the greater community, society, planet, evolution of humanity? These are the questions we are wise to ask, rather than the predictable questions that we tend to ask. Does that make sense?
Oh, first of all, thank you for sharing and transparency in all your heart. I feel the moment I read your bio, I start to cry, and I start to cry. I remember reading it, and I start to cry because of the love that you have for others, and that capacity to have the compassion and strength and the forgiveness and the higher service that you are bringing to this world. And I just want to thank you so much for you, for your being, and for listening to that girl at 14 years old, and for taking it as the biggest commitment to yourself, that this is what matters, that inner voice that we have sometimes, that we are not able to trust in moments. And I wish for everyone listening, watching this, that you will never have to experience anything that is so difficult. And I wish that for you, and I wish that for the world, that we don't have to. Unfortunately, even in those days, we have our human are suffering at a level that is completely incomprehensible for our human mind, completely. And yet you manage to, as a 14-year-old, connect to that inner knowing that there is something bigger. There is something bigger in your potentiality. And what I hear is that capacity to hold the vision for 5-6 more years of, I don't know when, I don't know how. And every day my human will walk towards that vision, because you took action. You start to play violin, you start to learn, to trade, you all this preparation that you did, showing up for yourself every day amidst all this. How can more than how you did it, how can we empower others who are going through to those times that are challenging individual lives? How do you keep that commitment to the trust, that the potentiality of what's possible when there is no time? Because humans have this deadline feeling. How do we take out time from the equation and trust that it's divine timing?
Yeah, that's a big one. That time is I think the kryptonite for people, is that because everything, if it doesn't happen in that time, they attach so much meaning and especially when it comes to money, they apply, it's not a shortage of money, it's more a shortage of time, and people confuse that. But again, we have a misunderstanding of time, because in the quantum field, there isn't the linear perspective of time that we understand in the world, which I believe is a man-made construct in order for society to operate as it does. So, like, just take my experience, for example, like, if I had have escaped in that time and forced it when I was 14 or 15, would I have been the person to hold the energy to be able to get the money out of magic in less than 24 hours and then be in London? Would I have been then the person to be able to get a job in order to be self-sufficient, in order to be financially empowered? At 15, what would my journey have been? So, everything happens when you allow and you surrender to aligned timing. You surrender to trusting the process. It's one of the things. I don't get me wrong. During those years, when there was torture going on and all sorts of horrendous stuff going on, there was not like, I wasn't in a Zen state saying, oh, this will be fine. It's like, no, I was responding. I was triggered. I was angry. I was hurt. I was lonely. I was sad. I was tearful. But I always came back to my spirit. I always came back to my soul, always found my way back, and then calmed the autonomic nervous system. That's actually that by doing that, that's what you do. So you biologically shift your state. So you're back into that knowing place, and I'm taking action, empowering myself just because I have faith. I've got no evidence, but I have faith that I know I will create the life that I desire. This is going to be the way, because we are two components. We are our soul and spirit. We are also human. It's what I say, a life of mastery and self-governance is marrying what I call our inner technology with our outer technology. Our inner technology is our soul and our spirit, and our outer technology is our human being. Marrying those together is where we experience the highest levels of self-mastery. And that is what we need. It's not easy, because every fiber in the human, because we've promoted it to master, that's the society we live in. And we've got so much conditioning and so much coding, ancestral as well as our own experiences. When we're responding from within the human, it is the hardest thing, because our body works against us. Because the body, when it's triggered, it gets triggered. It sends off the neurotransmitter, sends off into our genes messages to say we're in high alert, we're in stress. And what happens is the energy centers that we have in our body then are depleted, because it's trying to keep our body healthy, trying to deal with the stress, instead of being used as a powerful broadcaster into the universe, connecting, allowing us to connect to our superconscious and the universe and feel one with the universe. Instead, when we have suppressed energy centers, when our energy systems in our body is being used to manage stress, to stop disease in our body, to stop inflammation in our body, we are going inwardly focused. We're not broadcasting, we're inward, and we're in survival. And it's in survival mode, which is where most people live most of the time. Everything is binary. It's either there's predator or there's prey, and there's this constant polarized response system going on. But when we step out of that into the soul space, there is only the higher level consciousness emotions, or the synthesized emotions of love, compassion, empathy, gratitude, and appreciation. And your autonomic nervous system is then is allowed the space to do its work, its real work, and that is to empower our body to build our energy centers, to live in coherence and radiate out into the universe. And that's when we become one, because when we go inward and we're responding to stress, we feel separate. And that separation, that perceived separation we have as a human, is, I honestly believe, the source of all our suffering.
Separation, yes. The body, the human body, fighting against the deeper mission that we are here to do in our lifetime. And as you mentioned, that that getting into that survival state where we are trying to protect our own body from disease is disconnecting us from intuition,
Yes.
from hearing that inner voice. When someone says, I don't have clarity, I don't know my purpose, there's a disconnection from that higher that we are blocking. We're basically blocking our own mission, our own path in life. So how do we, I mean, it's a very big question, but how do you do it when you work with your clients and your community? How do you start untangling that part? How do we come back to the connection?
So essentially in my work, what I have done is I have studied this for like 25 years now. I'm just trying to understand, well, getting a deeper understanding as to my experience, why I responded the way I did, why I had that experience, how I managed it, why I held the line for all those years, how I was able to create from nothing magic. And like today, I live in Barbados, a tropical island, with the love of my life. We've been together for 22 years. We're business partners, we're lovers, we're best friends. It's an extraordinary life we live. I've had many businesses in many different industries. There's nothing I can't do. There's nothing I won't put my hand to. That doesn't come into my sphere of awareness. I've studied it. What is it? And what is it about society that is stopping people doing that, being able to tap into that? I have come up with the trilogy of what I call the Trilogy of Transformation, which is the process, I suppose, in which I take people through, but it's a multifaceted approach. First of all, the very, very first thing is we have to learn to love anything that we don't love. Because anything in our life that we don't love is running us. It's running our autonomic nervous system. It's running our brain. It's running our human. It's running our destiny. It's creating a predictable outcome. It's making sure that what we got yesterday will be the same as we get today and tomorrow. Nothing will change, because any area of life that you're not in love with, it's going to run you. It's going to overpower you. Any area of life you're not empowered, you will be overpowered. And if you're not empowered financially, you cannot be empowered in life. That's what I've come to realize. So that's the first thing, is I go through what are the things that are running you? What are the things you cannot put hand on your heart and say, I love you? One of the tormentors in my life was my father. Many, many years later, I went back to Ireland and I reported him. And again, this was soul-led. I had no idea why I was doing it. There was no logic. And again, the police said, this is impossible. There's no ways we can, this is so long ago. There's like no ways. And sure enough, I said, okay, fine. They came back to me and said, you know what, we can do it. So they took the case and they investigated it. It took a few years, and eventually it went to the High Court of Ireland. A case like this had never happened. And then I asked something else that was really strange, and I don't know why I did. I had no idea why I did it. I asked for it to be held out of camera. In other words, public. I had no idea why. It had never been done anywhere in the world. I asked for it to be public. It was public. The judge allowed it to be public. You can imagine the media attention all over the world. This got. He was sentenced, and he was just one of them. He was sentenced to 54 years. A case like this had never been held, and the judge has said there's never been anything like this in his life, in the courts. A few years later, again, it wasn't that I wanted to get back at him. I knew that I wouldn't get my childhood back. I knew that everything, I was living a happy life by now. I was with my husband. We were in South Africa, because I spent most of my adult life in South Africa. We had a wonderful life, and I couldn't understand this. Why was I drawn to do this? The outcome of that was that incidents of reporting child abuse, incest, and rape went up something like 84% in Ireland as a result, which was good. But my real story, I believe, is not what happened to me, but what happened next. I was back in South Africa, and I got a phone call a few years after he went to jail. And the detective says, your father has been moved from jail to a hospice, he's dying. And I knew, before I hung up, turned to Tiny, my husband, I said, I need to go back to Ireland. No idea why. Again, it was my soul speaking. It was guided. I was being pulled, magnetically pulled. There was no human logic, nothing involved. I went back to Ireland, and of course, the human in me was saying, holding on to Tiny for dear life, saying, "You're coming with me. You're coming with me." And of course, he was. He wasn't going to let me do it alone. And you're coming into the room with me, yeah. So he was coming into the room with me, and we got to the hospice, and they say, "No, my father won't see him. He'll only see me alone." So it was the hardest thing I ever did. Again, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just feel an overwhelming sense of knowing. Now I walk into the room and I see him, and the first words out of my mouth was, "Dad, thank you, I love you." And in that moment, everything made sense. Everything made sense, because the release, I swear, because in that moment I saw angels around me. It was the most glorious moment. It was the biggest gift the universe has ever given me, to be able to face and say that, to share that with somebody who was obviously tormented himself. Okay. But to share that with somebody, share that with him, and understand that this is what life is all about. Love, compassion, empathy, appreciation, and gratitude. And there is nothing that you could possibly experience that there is not an act of love. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've experienced it. And there lies bliss, inner joy, happiness, and pure, beautiful, universal love. It is extraordinary. And I would love to just say this one other thing, because a lot of people are trapped, enraptured in the chaos that's going on in life at the moment. I mean, goodness gracious me, we've had a rough few years. Yeah. Right, it's been rough. It is rough. It is tough. It is hard, and it's chaos. I'm going to postulate a theory that I believe we're on the cusp of an evolutionary shift in society. We're in it. It's happening. It's happening. We're in it. We can't stop it. It has gathered momentum so much. And the evidence of that momentum is in the chaos. That is evidence of the momentum, because people don't like change, and that is happening. And this evolution I call the revolution. It's not a revolution of arms and weapons. It's a revolution of love, compassion, empathy, gratitude, and appreciation. That extent of, if you understand the world as duality, the extent of which we see this chaos in the world, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, based on my own experience, that the equal amount of love, compassion, empathy, appreciation is there as well. It's just not as overt yet. Yes. Yet. It's growing. We can see it, can't we? Yeah. We can see that love. We can see the outpouring of love, the elevation of consciousness going on. But the media and the noise of the chaos is at the moment louder. But the other side will break through. It is building to a crescendo. There is nothing going to stop it now. Nothing. Yes. That's what I just wanted to share that.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing that. I speak this morning. I spoke about the power of finding the connection within the disconnection, and choosing the connection, choosing the higher level of communication, empathy, and love, and being the bridge for that. Within the chaos, we can choose, even if it's hard, and it is hard, it is incomprehensible, and it might feel easier to blame and to be angry, and because it is easier, it is in our human wants to say, no, it's not possible, and blame, and find a way to say that there is somebody else. And yes, there is, but also it's all in us as well. If we are continuously creating that disconnection, if we continue to choose to speak our words of either unity or blame, either anger or love, empathy, compassion, and it's something we almost have to relearn, because many times it does not come from childhood. It does not come from education to know how to have the empathy. I'm born in Russia with Ukrainian my mother's side is all Ukrainian. And I remember that as a child, we were not allowed to cry. It was in the culture, the emotional was that we don't cry, it's not strong, as a very strong female lineage of my mother, my grandmother. And that feeling of emotions are not strong, emotions are not leadership. And it took me many years to allow myself to say, but actually I do care. And actually me having tears in my eyes as we speak about it, it's not making me less of a leader. If me showing up and being my human self, have an open heart, leading myself through the duality and love and forgive and walk with that, even when it's the hardest thing we can do, that, in my opinion, makes us conscious leaders. And that is where the connection comes back. The looking away, the turning the other side because it's too painful, and staying in the mind is the disconnection from that, where we are going. And as I am navigating this, as we are recording this, my biggest message today is, don't close your heart. Don't close to that feeling of love and empathy and compassion that we are all feeling, human, because we are all one, right? If you're feeling something, I am feeling that. When I'm closing that, I'm not only closing that to you, I'm closing it to myself. And I think that realizing that the disconnection we're creating because we don't want to feel is, at some point, in the chaos, we are going to feel.
Yes.
Now we are feeling. We are all feeling.
We are. 100%.
And getting,
And the more we try and stop it, the more we're handbraking ourselves in our life.
Yeah.
And we're only hurting ourselves when we do that.
Yeah.
So.
And the higher level, if we talk about universal intelligence, where this conversation is so powerful, it's almost like we talked about the individual resistance of being on our path. Now, if we talk about the collective resistance of going there,
we're seeing that. Seeing that. We are seeing that collective resistance up to 100%. And it's only because people don't understand. They don't understand. They don't understand, because everyone knows that we intuitively know that we're in this evolution that's happening.
Yes.
And on the chaos side, people are trying to find solutions within the limitations of the human, rather than stepping back and connecting to their higher self. Or there's people who are adding to the chaos because they want to try and stop it or hold on to it or whatever are their drivers. So you've got so many different parts playing out in the chaos, when in actual fact the only true answer is to step out, reconnect to source, and contribute again to the global evolution that is inevitably happening.
Yeah.
So, but there is a collective resistance, without a doubt, as you say.
Yeah, and it's also for the animal protection, it's environment, it's a human centered, but it's also planet centered. We are avoiding seeing so much that feels so painful somehow, that we are not in control, that we cannot but we can. That's as we can. We absolutely can. That's what you mentioned as well, as an individual level, but also at the collective level, we have the potential to hold the vision and play our violin and wait for that moment to appear in a divine timing, even in the challenge. And these lessons of yours are so important. I truly hope that the ones listening and watching, that you're taking the time to let this sink in for you on an individual level and feel it, because this is a emotional conversation, and this conversation is all about feeling it in your body and seeing how does this land. And I would like to ask you, Judy, is there any advice you can give for the ones listening and watching on how do you in this time tune into that? Where do you start?
Breathe. Breath is the medicine of life. So breathe. So when you're finding yourself triggered, breathe. And write down the things that you've experienced in your life or are experiencing that are triggering you can't love. And start playing devil's advocate, right? You don't have to commit to it, just play devil's advocate and start saying, okay, so what if this is an act of love? Where is it? So, you can do it in a way that's safe for the human, that the human doesn't feel like it's giving up control, okay? And just start playing with it. Because in the finding the love is the pathway that will unfold, the light that will shine for you to take to an evolutionary quantum leap of your growth and what you can contribute to yourself, your family, your community, and society as a whole. That is the key. Unlocking that is the first step.
Thank you, Judy. And everyone, do take a moment to breathe and do these exercises to play the devil's advocate and find where there is some answers that you might have not seen, because it's not linear, it's not in the time, it's a bigger conversation to have with yourself and with your soul. And Judy, this has been a true honor to speak with you, and I'm so grateful and thankful for myself and for the whole community that you took the time and shared from your heart, from your gifts, and from all your experience and your life journey. I am deeply, deeply touched by your soul and the gifts that you bring into the world. And
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the space and for creating the space for the people that you're serving. Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure, Judy. And I would love to hear, where can people go deeper with your work? How can they explore your universe of services and programs and support?
I have a Facebook group. I'm most active in Facebook, not so much Instagram yet. Haven't got a handle on that yet. But Facebook, for all its sins. But Attune to Wealth. I've got a group called Attune to Wealth where people are very welcome to join. And I have a new program actually, and I think it would be really, really powerful for people who want to experience tapping into the soul. And that is what I call the unified meditation technique. What I have learned, because I mentioned it during our conversation, is that there's a lot of talk about coherence, being heart coherence. There's a lot of talk about meditation. There's a lot of talk about chakras and activating energy centers, and they're always they're always separate. So what I have learned is that we are wise to have heart-brain coherence, activated energy centers, and meditation. But the problem is so many people get into knots about meditation. They don't understand it. They don't know how to do it. But when you combine these three, it is the most extraordinary, powerful experience, mystical experience you have. And so I have actually managed to put it together in a program, which I'll be starting in April, May. If anyone would love to join. It is a journey. It's a blissful journey where we merge the three together, and you will experience mystical moments on that journey. I can promise you that.
Beautiful. I will share all this in the description below so you can go and discover this program and Judy's Facebook group as well. Do let us know in the comment below what you're taking away from today and how this is landing for you. This is really a dialogue with us here, but also with you listening and watching. I want you to feel involved and find your space to sit at this table of conversation as we are going deeper into the topics of legacy, creating legacy, really tapping into our power, into our heart, into our mission. Judy, thank you so much. And everyone who listened and watched, thank you for being here with us today. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.